Today we have the shootout before the shootout. We have the Panasonic Z95B versus the Sony BRAVIA8 Mark II. Up next.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
Hey, what's up guys? I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for joining me. It is summer and we are only a few days away from our TV Super Bowl, the Value Electronics King of TV Shootout. And today we have two of four of the major competitors of that epic competition. The Panasonic Z95B versus the Sony BRAVIA8 Mark II. Two iconic, legendary manufacturers going head to head in our shootout before the shootout. Panasonic is one of my favorite manufacturers of all time, same with Sony. Once Panasonic returned, all I could think about was, can Panasonic out Sony? You're gonna find that out today. Without further ado, let's check out the Panasonic Z95B versus the Sony BRAVIA8 Mark II. Thank you so much for watching. Wait, before we start, you're gonna hear throughout this video in the comments about the Sony BRAVIA8 Mark II having a magenta tint to it. Some of it is there, however, most of it is due to our camera sensors. You're seeing in real time how a QD OLED versus a W OLED show up on camera. The Samsung S90F does have a pinkish tone to it compared to the A80L W OLED from Sony. So I wanted you to see it in real time, why at times you're going to see a magenta tint to the BRAVIA8 Mark II versus the Panasonic Z95B. That's all I wanted to say in real time. Let's do it. All right, guys, let's do it. Let's check out the build quality and design of the Panasonic Z95B and the Sony BRAVIA8 Mark II. Now, the design of each TV could not be more different. You have a wide stance on the Sony BRAVIA8 Mark II with two positions, both flush and high, but the width of this stand is absolutely absurd. It goes to the edge of the TV. Now, while it actually looks nice, it's nearly impossible to find a smaller stand or table for this TV to sit on. I'm actually using two tables combined to be able to place the BRAVIA8 Mark II in this comparison. Something they definitely need to remedy going forward. You have a small matrix border and a tiny black bezel. The matrix border is slightly smaller than the Z95B. Very small Sony badging in the corner. The legs are very stable. We're here in the higher position, which would make room for a sound bar. The TV is very sturdy and rather heavy. You also have a more thick design like last year's A95L and BRAVIA8. The legs go all the way up. I'll show you the back of the TV shortly. I love the design of the BRAVIA8 Mark II. It's simple, it's elegant, but the stance being that wide is actually a detriment that they definitely need to change, as many of you have not purchased the TV for that reason. You're not buying another piece of furniture to sit it on top of. For the Panasonic, we have a circular center stand, which also swivels. Small matrix border, very thin black bezel as well. It has one position. It sits just below the BRAVIA8 Mark II. small Panasonic logo in the corner. You have cloth covering the Technics speakers that are all around the frame of the TV. It's a very unique design that many of you love and don't love. Now, if the BRAVIA8 Mark II was in its flush stance, it would sit below the Z95B. So I'd rather just leave it the way it is. Now, the Z95B's unique design is a point of contention for many of you. I love the design of it. As you can see here, it is very thick. Again, cloth over the speakers, and it looks like a traditional OLED is on the front of it. Speakers throughout. You also have a heat displacement system built into the Z95B, but it is a unique design that many of you may not like. I wish they offered two versions of it. You have 4 HDMI, 2 are HDMI 2.1, capable of 4K 144 Hertz. Looking at the back, you also have this incredible Technics sound system that is throughout. This is the best sounding TV on the market right now, the back of the swivel stand, and you have a detachable power cable. Moving on to the Sony BRAVIA8 Mark II, you have the textured back that we've always had on the Sony Master Series of the past. We have 4 HDMI, 2 are HDMI 2.1, capable of 4K 120 Hertz. All this empty space can be filled with plastic inserts, the cable management that covers the legs, and all of the cables. You have your speakers here. You can also see the two different positions if I was to lower the stand to its more flush position. You also have the space at the top of the BRAVIA8 Mark II for the optional BRAVIA cam. Both TVs are very unique in their design. Let's look at the remotes. You have your traditional Sony remote. This used to be backlit for a TV of this magnitude. It should be backlit. It's a very basic remote. It does the trick. And for the Z95B, you have an Amazon Fire remote. That is the operating system. You do have a Learn button that sets it apart from the typical Fire TV remote. Both remotes are nothing to write home about. Let's look at reflection handling. Now, the exposure is up very high at this moment, just to show you an exaggerated look of the reflection handling of both. The sun is in the room, but not hitting the screen. What I want to show you is that QD OLEDs will look brown, and they are unwatchable if the screen is actually being hit by direct sunlight. So it's bright in here, not hitting the TV directly. You can see the reflection handling of both here. If the screen was being hit directly, it would literally turn gray. That is the one and only real weakness to QD OLED. You can see how it's brown where the Z95B remains black. Now, Z95B may have the best glossy reflection handling screen in the business, right there with the G5, perhaps even a bit better. That said, the BRAVIA8 Mark II is completely watchable in a bright room such as this. Let's move on to what I call the picture preset overview, where I show you the different presets from each manufacturer and how they compare to one another. In any comparison, you can leave it in its most accurate preset, but many of you don't watch TV that way. What I'm doing is going through each preset. For me, the presets are very important. They are the signature of the manufacturer. What is that manufacturer saying to you? It's their interpretation of cinema, dynamic, vivid, standard, normal. This is what they're telling you. So I'm here to point out the differences and try to match them up the best way I can. Now, the Panasonic has more presets, but some of them are a little redundant. You have Professional 1, Professional 2, True, Cinema, Filmmaker. They're all very similar. They do change a little bit here and there. However, Auto AI, Normal, and Sport are more comparable to the standard preset on the BRAVIA8 Mark II. But I'll show you in a moment why I won't be using those presets much in this comparison. It's more down to tone mapping and the differences between the tone mapping that makes one TV look much brighter than the other. That said, this is the signature of the manufacturer. So changing that and trying to make one have tone mapping the other doesn't have will literally cripple one TV over the other. Showing you the tone mapping, for instance, we get into the standard preset. For Sony, every preset other than Vivid has dynamic tone mapping at gradation preferred. In the past, this wasn't very important as they didn't look much different from each other. However, this year, brightness preferred and gradation preferred has a massive difference in certain presets, namely standard. So you could toggle brightness preferred on and get much more brightness. The problem is it will then be brighter than the Z95B. If I turn off the dynamic tone mapping on the Z95B, I then cripple it as it won't look as bright. You see the issue. So we'll be avoiding the standard preset as well as sports and AI and staying to the cinema presets and the most accurate presets being filmmaker and professional. Here we're going to very quickly show you the presets. I'm going to actually go through this very fast and show you how each one looks in this shot. They look very different, not just because of the colors, but because of the saturation. That is the signature of both manufacturers. Now I take the time to do this as many of you watch the TV out of the box, meaning in the standard preset here or the normal preset. Now, you are not all going to want to watch it in filmmaker or professional. That's why I take the time to do this. Guys, believe me, it'd be easier for me to leave it in filmmaker or professional, give you a 10-minute video and call it a day. I'll film about 13 hours of footage to bring you a 20-minute video. Not only that, I go through the video to make sure I have the least amount of differences in terms of that magenta tint from filming a QD OLED. So you'll see very few scenes in this video that show that pinkish tint. Again, that is because of the camera sensor more than what is inherently there on the BRAVIA8 Mark II. This takes a tremendous amount of time in editing, and I do think it's worth it for you guys to see the best that these TVs have to offer, and more importantly, how they can look very different from one another. That said, we will move back into filmmaker and professional for the color reproduction portion of the video. That way they do look as similar as possible. However, the colors are very different, regardless of filming a QD OLED or not. This is actually how they look in person, or as close as you're gonna see to what I see in person. Which is why you're seeing all the other colors other than white or those light colors that can show pink. This is how they look in front of me. So for the Sony, throughout the video, you're gonna see a lot of professional, cinema, and the vivid preset when we get to the brightness portion of the video. And on the Z95B, you'll see dynamic in that same portion, but for the most part, you're gonna see cinema and then some of the professional presets, 1 and 2, and cinema, true cinema, I should say. And you'll see different versions of that in the SDR portion because professional 1 looks very different in SDR. We'll cover that a little bit later in the video. But what are you thinking so far? Both of these manufacturers are known for their picture processing and upscaling. On the Sony BRAVIA8 Mark II, you have the XR cognitive processor, and on the Panasonic Z95B, we have the HCX Pro AI Mark II processor. Both have elite image quality and image processing. They're both iconic for this, going way back to the Trinitron and the Plasma days. Now, for me personally, all my years being involved in the Value Electronics TV Shootout, I wish Panasonic was here. I know Panasonic has been involved in Vincent at HDTV test shootouts over the years. I've always wanted them here simply because the shootout is really about accuracy, director's intent, and processing. And that's where Panasonic excels, very much like Sony. Let's move into our peak brightness part of the video, which will put them in both dynamic and vivid, and you will see the differences in brightness here. The tone mapping is going to be on dynamic tone mapping for the Z95B and a brightness preferred for the BRAVIA8 Mark II. Now the brightness differences are evident. Remember, we're in vivid and dynamic. The tone mapping is virtually the same, but the differences are evident here. That is not due to the capabilities of the 4th gen QD OLED. It can be equally as bright. It's Sony's choice to remain at this brightness level, and I do understand why. They will not break that thought of their image quality to make the TV brighter than the other TVs. That said, the vivid preset in the BRAVIA8 Mark II is plenty bright. The Z95B is brighter. Again, that is a choice, not a limit of the technology. Again, guys, signature. That said, we are looking at the brightest OLEDs in the world this year with the 4 competitors you're going to see at the Value Electronics TV Shootout. We shouldn't even be worried about brightness anymore, honestly. We are there. As far as HDR impact, both TVs excel and they are absolutely gorgeous. But for brightness, the Z95B is the brighter TV. If that's important to you, I'm telling you it really shouldn't be. The image should really matter because these TVs are so bright from what OLEDs used to be. Now, the BRAVIA8 Mark II has faced heavy criticism this year, a lot of it unfairly so. It is a better TV, in my opinion, than the A95L. Is it light years better? Of course not, but a lot of its tone mapping choices and the way the presets have been programmed and designed this year makes the TV not look nearly as bright as it is. Things like the tone mapping that we've talked about, the professional mode in SDR, these things are not quite as bright as their TVs of the past. So going into those presets or even leaving the main professional preset alleviates a lot of that criticism. You just have to be willing to jump around a little bit and check out those presets, and I think you'll be very happy with it. Especially when it's not being compared side by side with the brightest OLEDs in the world. And the Z95B to me is an appreciable upgrade from the Z95A, the same way the G4 and the G5 were. The Z95A was very bright. The Z95B gets you even brighter, but retains the color saturation that the Z95A would lose at those very high nit counts. As far as the OS, the Panasonic Z95B has Fire TV built in, and Sony BRAVIA8 Mark II has Google. This isn't super important to me, but it might be important to you. But for many of you in regards to the Panasonic, you feel like Fire TV means something else. It means it's not owned by Panasonic, or it's not truly Panasonic anymore. They're owned by another company. That is nonsense. Panasonic is still the Panasonic you know and love, but they were not successful at having their own operating system, and it was a waste of their resources. That team that you know and love from the plasma days is intact. 70, 80 years they've been doing this. Same with Sony. That's what's amazing about the culture of both manufacturers. They do have that ongoing craftsmanship for decades upon decades. I know, I've met both teams. I've been to Japan with Sony. I know how long this tradition has been going on. Panasonic and Sony are very much the same in that regard. And this is the Panasonic and the Sony you all know and love. Speaking of love, special shout out to my hero, the one and only Jennifer Gala, and her second channel, HDR SUPER Channel. Most of the content seen within the intro and this video is from both of those channels. Check the description below for links to both channels, and consider becoming a Patreon member to Jennifer's main channel and download all of this amazing content in full Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos. Thank you, Jen. Now back to the OS, choose whichever you prefer. I think both of them are sufficient to get around the settings and to stream from. In regards to sound, the BRAVIA8 Mark II has very good sound. The sound on the Panasonic Z95B is on another level. However, it is integral to the design, meaning you want the sound or you don't want the sound, it's built into the TV, meaning the design reflects that. There's no way to have a more simple version that is more elegant. So if you're not a big fan of the design or you don't even need the speakers, it's going to be hard to choose the Z95B in that regard. That said, the BRAVIA8 Mark II sound is more than adequate, and you do have a more elegant design. But keep in mind how wide the feet actually are. You may need a new table just to buy a 65-inch TV. So each one has its drawbacks. But I think we can agree at this point in the video, the image quality of both TVs is off the charts. They are absolutely stunning, and they take different routes to get to the same place. They both want the director's intent. However, I would say that the Z95B is actually more accurate and more natural. However, that is a choice. Again, the XR cognitive processor has a more detailed image at times. For them, it's not just about accuracy, it's about more detail. For me, even when the BRAVIA8 Mark II is in its most accurate preset, there's still a bit of processing going on. They started that a few years ago. And though you may not love it if you're just from an accuracy standpoint, it is definitely a more detailed, or at least fine detailed image. Again, it's really what's more important to you. One is neither right nor wrong. It's just what is your preference when you're watching content at home. Now, in regards to the Value Electronics King of TV's Shootout, that is a professional reference shootout. TVs will all be calibrated and in their most accurate preset, and the content they will be using will be reference. There are a lot of metrics and different slides and different markers to determine who wins. What I'm trying to say to you is a lot of the differences you're seeing within this video, especially in terms of peak brightness, are not really going to show up at the shootout. The shootout's point is to get them as close to reference, meaning as close to the reference monitor that is there from Sony. So it's really more about making them look as accurate and as close to that monitor versus here making them show what they're really capable of individually, meaning I want them to look as different as possible per the manufacturer, where the shootout is to make them look as similar as possible, just to see which one is closest to reference. I'll tell you right now, out of the 4 TVs, they are all absolute stunners, and each of them can easily win. That's how close they are this year, more so than ever. Let's move into SDR. Now, Sony's also been getting killed for dim SDR, when in reality, it's just one preset, being the professional preset. You can also see here in the Z95B, their filmmaker preset is not very bright in SDR, still brighter than the Sony. As you can see here, calm is freaking brighter than professional. So what I'm saying to you is when you're watching SDR from any manufacturer, look at Professional 1 on the Z95B. You're going to have to get out of the most accurate presets. You're not going to watch sports in filmmaker mode or in professional. Standard, actually any other preset other than professional for the Sony is more than bright enough. Same with the Z95B. Cinema is not super bright, filmmaker mode is pretty dim, but professional 1 is very bright, sports, auto AI, any of the other presets. So guys, from any other manufacturer out there, most of their filmmaker or most accurate presets are not very bright in SDR. Only the G5 and the Hisense 116UX were very bright in their most accurate presets in SDR. If you want bright SDR, just get out of that most accurate preset and you'll be fine. Now here you're gonna see the Z95B in Professional 1 and the BRAVIA8 Mark II in Cinema, and we're here in a very bright room and both are more than bright enough. Now I don't mean to go off on a tangent in regards to SDR, but hurting these TVs and saying that they aren't bright enough because they're in one preset and you're not getting out of that preset is really troubling to me. Wander out of that and you'll be more than happy with the SDR brightness of many of the manufacturers this year, let alone the 2 that are sitting in front of me. Again, look at 2 OLEDs in a bright room and a semi-bright SDR. It's not like they're in vivid and dynamic and they're more than bright enough in SDR. Let's move on to Dolby Vision. I'll show you the presets of both. On the Z95B, we have Dolby Vision Vivid, Dolby Vision IQ, and Dolby Vision Dark. We have Dolby Vision Vivid, Dolby Vision Bright, and Dolby Vision Dark on the Sony BRAVIA8 Mark II. We'll match them up as good as we can. I believe we're going to settle on a Dolby Vision IQ and Dolby Vision Bright. We're using the Spears and Munsell benchmark calibration disc. Amazing disc. Go out and grab it. Very useful for any person that's into TV image quality to have. Now, Panasonic is the only OLED out there to have HDR10 plus Dolby Vision and HDR10. Now, even here, it was very hard to find images where that magenta tint wouldn't show up. Again, that magenta tint is due to the camera sensor picking up the differences between QD-OLED and WOLED. You would not see that tint as much if the TV was by itself. Both have excellent Dolby Vision implementation. The Dolby Vision on the Sony Dark used to be way too dark. It's not the case anymore, though for this comparison, they both matched up very well with Dolby Vision IQ on the Z95B and Dolby Vision Bright on the BRAVIA8 Mark II. Let's move into the most important test of all, the Colombo upscaling test. The magenta tint will be there. I apologize, nothing I can do about it. Both are equal in terms of upscaling. They both do an incredible job when it comes to upscaling sub 1080p content. The Sony does have a bit more edge enhancement. It's not noise, but it's definitely there over the more natural Z95B. I do find their upscaling to be dead even. Let's move on to some movie shots. Both TVs are absolutely amazing. They're very cinematic, and it's just really about choosing the presets. They're both in their cinema presets. You can see that the HDR impact is there on both. At times, the BRAVIA8 Mark II actually looks brighter, though we know the Z95B is brighter. So does it show up in real content? Not always, but they both are absolutely stunning. And that image processing is evident in streaming and especially in your Blu-rays. Unbelievable. Both are extremely cinematic and an absolute joy to watch movies on. Let's briefly touch on some gaming on the PS5 Pro. Both have absolutely gorgeous game modes. The Panasonic Z95B has 4K 144 Hz, making it the better choice for PC gamers. However, 4K and 120 is plenty for many of you, even on PC. Console gaming, they are both beautiful. Their game modes are absolutely gorgeous. You have two presets on the Z95B, Game and True Game, and on the BRAVIA8 Mark II, you have FPS, RTS, and I believe RPG. They both look very good. If you don't feel that the BRAVIA8 Mark II is bright enough in gaming, go into its tone mapping and go from gradation preferred to brightness preferred. We're in brightness preferred right now because it's nowhere near as bright as the Z95B for this comparison. So it is enabled as brightness preferred on the BRAVIA8 Mark II. Both are gorgeous in terms of their gaming. Sony has one of the best looking game modes in the business. Neither really has an HDIG feature, so you'll have to look elsewhere for that, but both of them are excellent in nearly every situation. Now, in closing, it's literally win-win regardless of which one you choose. We are looking at the pinnacle and the peak of OLED technology. The Z95B has a new primary RGB tandem OLED panel from LG Displays, and the BRAVIA8 Mark II is a 4th gen quantum dot OLED from Samsung Displays. They're both absolutely amazing. Image processing off the charts. They're both extremely vibrant, bright, beautiful. They're absolutely incredible. The processing, again, from two iconic companies. The upscaling is the best in the business. You're seeing them compete with one another. This is a heck of a matchup. You tell me who wins, and who do you think is going to win the Value Electronics King of TV Shootout? I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing. Love you guys. Take care.
It's better to burn out than to fade away. There can be only one.